York County Council, May 3rd, 2021, council meeting to order. The Honorable Allison Love from District 2 will lead us in invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Heavenly Father, we come to you asking for your blessing and help as we are gathered together. We pray for guidance in the matters at hand and ask that you would clearly show us how to conduct our work with a spirit of professionalism. Give us the desire to find ways to excel in your work. In your name we ask. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, if the following individuals would come forward for the oath of office: Derek Williams for the Zoning Board of Appeals, District 4, and Joe Costello, Bethel Fire Tax Board. And as you make your way to the front, do want to say thank you on behalf of the council for your service. We cannot do the job that we do without volunteers for the various committees that come forward, and we do appreciate all that you do.
I think David's going to do his at the zoning board meeting.
Is he?
Yeah.
Okay.
On behalf of council, I've been authorized to administer the oath of office. So thank you for your willingness to serve. Do you kindly raise your right hand and repeat after me? I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I am duly qualified,
that I am duly qualified,
according to the Constitution of this state,
according to the Constitution of this state,
to exercise the duties of the office
to exercise the duties of the office
which I have been appointed,
to which I have been appointed,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
discharge the duties thereof,
discharge the duties thereof,
and preserve, protect, and defend
and preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of this state
the Constitution of this state
and of the United States.
and of the United States. So help me God.
Thank you. Congratulations.
At this time, Vice Chairman Robert Winkler to recognize EC Pump Black family.
Thank you, and I'm going to come around in a minute and present the family with a plaque, but I asked Karen to email me this, and I was going to try to memorize some of it, but
You're getting older.
EC Black did a lot of stuff, and I can't remember all of it, so I got it up here in writing, so I'll be reading off some of it. But before I do that, I want to say thank you to David and management for getting the plaque off the building for me and making sure that it was preserved and not wound up in a pile somewhere. And to Karen for helping me research this and for getting the plaque cleaned, and the county staff that you enlisted in getting it clean, because it was not real nice for presenting when we first pulled it off the building. So thank y'all for your help in all of that. And so this evening, I'm gonna present the plaque that was on the EC Black building across the street. And just a little bit about EC, or Punk Black, I guess as he was known by most people around here. And I figured that out. I got a road down past my house, between my house and Black's Peaches. It's Punk Black Road. So now I know who it was named after. So, but he was born on August 11th, 1920, and he took over the family business of Black's Peaches along with the general store during World War II. He also owned Black's Trucking Company in the Cotton Belt community. And we talk about it in council sometimes before Home Rule, which is when the powers that be in Columbia decided we could rule ourselves. Before that rule was enacted and instituted in 1975, E.C. Black served as a member of the York County Board of Directors, which was the precursor for the county council, from 1960 till 1975. And he was elected as the first council member representing District 3, where I represent, in 1976, and he served in that capacity till 1980. Y'all listen to this for those of us that are up here on council now. During his time on county council, he assisted in developing the York County Council form of government, the adoption of the York County Seal, creating the York County Disaster Preparedness Agency, the historic Brattonsville lease agreement, creation of the York County Library System, creation of the Economic Development Board, and the establishment of the York County Animal Shelter. And so he was a busy man. The plaque I'm going to present was named for the naming and the celebration of the E.C. Black building in honor of him and in memory of him in 1986, the year after he passed away. At the time the building was commemorated, E.C. Black housed the U.S. Agricultural Stabilization and Conservation Service, the U.S. Soil Conservation Service, the Farmers Home Administration, South Carolina Forestry Commission, and the York County Coroner's Office. The building was last used by the county as the voter registration and elections office before we built this facility and moved it all over here. I just wanted to do this and say thank you to the Black family because they've been an important part of Western York County and District 3 since before there was even a District 3 to talk about. And it's my honor and privilege to present the plaque to them from the EC Black Building this evening. And for those of you that don't know, if you haven't, if you're in the area anytime and you want a good lunch that's really, really good price, run over to Black's Peaches and see Beth back here in a minute, and they've got good daily lunch specials for $5.
Free advertising.
And great peaches too. And if y'all step up here, we're gonna get a little picture right quick. And I didn't realize they made these plaques so heavy until I. Yeah, where you want us to? I was looking to see who the council members were at the time. They'll all squeeze in here.
Anybody else? One, two.
And thank y'all very much. I'm gonna hand this to you.
I'd like to say thank you. I heard my daddy say this a million times. You can't live in the country by yourself. And he appreciated all the folks that came into our community and he welcomed, spoke to them. But I don't think he can speak to that many people now.
And these two gentlemen are Mr. E.C. Black's sons, their wives, and then two grandchildren.
Thank you for being here. At this time, we move to the public forum session of the agenda, and just as a reminder, there are a number of folks that have signed up on this, and a lot of times folks sign up and they don't realize that they would prefer to speak at the public hearing side. If you choose to come up, you will be restricted to 2 minutes, and I have to call time. I hate doing that, but I have to be rude and call time. You'll see it blinking, but I'll have to tell you to please stop talking. However, if when I call your name, you are here about an item that appears as a public hearing item, you can say, I'll wait and speak, and that way you aren't limited at the time the public hearing gets started. First on the list is John Cutrone. If you would state your name and give your address.
John Catrone, I live at 3374 Pleasant Road in Fort Mill. And I'm just here to say I think it's a great idea, what the man Lav wants to build there, and I'm in support of it.
Okay,
That's all I gotta say.
thank you, sir. Jennifer and Sam Dozier.
Hey, I'm Sam Dozier, 2850 Gordon Road. What we're trying to do is change our property from agriculture 1 to agriculture, just so that we could build an additional house on the property.
For my parents, just to live with us, take care of them.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Darren Nichols. Okay, public hearing, R.D. Haley. Harry Johnson. This one is hard to pronounce. I think the last name is Patel. I'm sorry, if you could state your full name and give your address.
Durendra Patel, 2216 India Hook Road. I have a convenience store and I'm asking for rezoning to be from RC1 to BD3.
Okay, thank you, sir. And then the last one, they must be a doctor because I cannot read a single thing on it. It looks like it's for Lazy Hawk, but it's a scribble. Is that you? Oh, yeah. I should have known. I assume you're going to defer to the public hearing, Mr. White? Okay. Do we have a motion for consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. First public hearing. That's right, isn't it, Robert?
That's what I got.
Council to hold a public hearing and consider third reading of an ordinance approving the transfer of the right-of-way purchased from property owners along Gwynn Street Extension between Road S4 Old North Main and US Highway 324 in Clover to the town of Clover, necessary for completion of Penny's 3 Project 11149-003, Phase 1. Do we have a motion? I'm sorry. Are we going to have any presentation from staff before we get into the public hearing?
Not on this particular one. On the others that are rezonings, we will.
Okay. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor? Anyone here who wishes to speak against? Second. Motion and a second to close. All those in favor of closing, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we are closed.
Move to approve.
Second. Motion and a second for third reading. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Rezoning action to hold a public hearing and consider first reading case number 21-05, tax map number 633-07-03-002, zoning request to rezone property from RC1 to BD3 with conditions.
Good evening, council members. It's a little bit of a new format for these rezoning public hearings. It's just a brief presentation from staff, so you all have the benefit of some background information, and also for members of the audience so they know what the public hearing is regarding. This particular application is for rezoning property on Indian Hook Road from RC1 to BD3. The applicant spoke just a moment ago. He's got an existing convenience store. It's a non-conforming use. It's a convenience store on an RC zoned property. So he's looking to expand the interior of it so that he can add liquor sales to that. And he has proposed to rezone to BD3 in order to be able to do that. So we've got a couple of the site photos here. You can see the existing conditions of the site. We've got the zoning map in the bottom corner there. You can see the gray parcels, that's City of Rock Hill. Sorry, I've got a fly in front of me. So the gray is the City of Rock Hill. The yellow is the RC zoning district. You can see the parcel outlined in red there. So there are existing BD3 properties in the area. And then you've got the future land use map there as well. It's got the neighborhood, residential, future land use designation there. And that does describe that small commercial uses are appropriate in that area on major roads and along existing commercial businesses. So to that end, staff recommends approval with conditions. So this is not typical, but most rezonings you'll see come through without recommended conditions. But this one, because it is non-conforming, staff felt that it was an appropriate time to bring the site into conformance as closely as possible. So we recommended initially 12 conditions. We have stricken number 9 because the applicant stated that they are using those poles. The Planning Commission voted 4-2 to recommend approval as well. However, they voted for modified conditions. So the 3 that have the stars on them, conditions 1, 2, and 10, staff disagrees with Planning Commission over those 3. The Planning Commissioner made the motion, stated that those items, 1, 2, and 10, were more aesthetic in nature versus safety. But in staff's opinion, those items would be required if this were a vacant lot that would be developed with this use today, and that would include the landscape buffering, separating the commercial property from the residential properties that are immediately adjacent. So when County Council makes a motion to, if there is a motion made for approval, we'd ask that you consider the conditions, and you would need to articulate which conditions you would prefer in that motion.
Thank you, Jonathan. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak against this zoning request? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor of this rezoning request?
It's Dhirendra Patel, 2216 India Hook Road. Yeah, these conditions is one of the things I was talking to the planning commission that it's unfeasible. I'm already doing commercial at RC1, and I just want to be approved to BD3 without these conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. Anyone else wish to speak in favor of the rezoning request? Do we have a motion to close?
Move to close.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
I don't know exactly what's happening here.
We just closed public hearing, but now we
Okay,
have the.
you're good.
A motion
Yes,
on the rezoning.
okay, you're good.
Do we have a new motion?
Motion to approve it with numbers 5, 6, and 8. Everything else stricken from it. My understanding is that this was a business well before the neighborhood even came aboard, so.
I'll second.
So as I understand the motion, it's to approve with the inclusion only of 5, 6, and 7, and the remaining conditions are
5, 6, and
5,
8.
6, and 8.
5, 6, and 8. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, you know, a lot of times, we haven't seen a lot of things come before us with conditions. And just looking at this list of what some others thought that needed to go into this property, before it can meet approval. And I'm one of the ones up here that always look at things as to how it costs and how it affects a business. You know, if a business is already operating there, now he's trying to get in a different use added on to it. You know, I see the star besides 1, 2, and 10. Installing a 20-foot type C landscape buffer. That's gonna be an additional cost. Provide survey of the property that includes all of it. You know, a lot of things that we get into adds cost to doing business in York County. And that's one of the things that I've had a rub with. Everything that we do, from a planning standpoint to execution standpoint, there's gonna be a cost. And luckily, and I'm glad to see that we're not gonna accept all of these conditions because these are adding more cost to doing business at a location that's already functioning. And like the gentleman said, if this was a brand new location, starting from scratch, then these type things would definitely be warranted to go into. So appreciate us striking down some of the what I would call unnecessary requirements to move forward with this business. So I'll support Brandon in his motion.
Yeah, I agree, Bump. I think that, you know, from this area and staying competitive with the rest of the market, both in this area and over into Charlotte and beyond, we've got to be, we've got to look at the interest of this. As you're listing out here, I think an existing business being here and wanting to improve on it, I think this is a great opportunity to show that we're, you know, in support of our local businesses. So, very good.
Yeah, and I've done a lot of talking with residents, talked to Mr. Patel as well as my representative with planning. The biggest thing is that this was an existing business before the neighborhood was even around. He's zoned as residential, and we need to get the zoning upright to begin with. However, you can't treat him as if he is a new business to meet all these requirements. I don't see this as, you know, approving exactly what you're wanting to do, but this is going to get your zoning right for you to be able to move forward from there.
Any other discussion?
So there are two things on here that I think are very important, and I think these are not a cost prohibitive to the business owner, but number 7, this is a big deal for me, is to remove the spotlights on a gas canopy and replace with code compliant lighting. That is very important. That's one of the most important things that we've done as a county council throughout York County is to to be more, just, aware of what lighting does when there's too much of it. So I think, I look at this as an opportunity to have one more business compliant with that. And I think the discontinue the vehicle sales on the property, I've driven by and I've seen that, and I don't think that it's necessarily the business selling those vehicles, but I do think that it looks bad. One of the worst things that happens in my district is property owners park cars out along the road. And so aesthetically, I think these are the two things that could be the least, just the least prohibitive cost-wise, and then I agree with the other things that Brandon has proposed.
And I'll just speak up for a minute. I agree with, what Brandon's trying to do, and with the business being an existing business. I used to live in Rock Hill Road by the business all the time. And my two things that I felt, I don't know how much the code compliant lighting costs, but I do know that is an expense. But two things I saw that are not an expense that I would like to see added to your motion would be numbers 11 and 12. Screen or remove any unused fixtures. If they're not used, then they're just clutter around the building, and that, clutters up for the neighbors. And then discontinue vehicle sales on the property. That's not something that's zoned for, and if we're allowing it, then we're kind of allowing things to kind of spread and stretch out some. So, I would like to see those two added to your motion for me to be able to support it. And I don't know about Allison's, I understand the lighting thing, I just don't know what that costs. I'm not familiar with that.
My only concern with the screener remove any unused fixtures that are visible from the street. As you can see, number 9 was struck from here because there was just not any understanding as to what the pole was, being a ventilation system for the pump. And I just don't want to run into any future situations. I mean, as of right now, he can continue operating the way that he has been, the way that the business has been for many years. All I'm trying to do is get him up to bringing him closer to code and getting the zoning corrected.
But can we make an amendment to include some additional items from this list?
I was going to say as well that, Robert mentioned, and my initial comment was going to be regarding the vehicle sales on the property, something that I've noticed for a long time, and I don't think it's too much to ask to comply with additional. It's not even our rule. I mean, we can make it as a condition, but there's already regulations involving the sale of motor vehicles on property without proper licenses, and I don't think it's too much to ask to comply with ordinances that already exist in order to move forward.
Well, the current motion on the floor is the motion that's been made by the district representative, unless
Make an
there's an
amendment.
amendment.
So I'll make an amended motion to approve with conditions number 5, 6, 8, 11, and 12.
I'll
Second.
Yeah.
Is this a friendly amendment? Do you approve of that?
I
Or do you
agree.
want to vote on the other? Okay.
Reasonable.
5, 6, 8, 11, and 12.
So the main motion is amended by the second. Thank you.
So we are essentially, just so folks know, we're voting on the entire motion because it was a friendly amendment from the representative who made the motion. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes as amended. Rezoning action, hold a public hearing and consider first reading case number 21-06, tax map number 437-00-00-035. Rezoning request to rezone from AGC to AGC 1 to AGC, 14.93 acres in District 5.
This application is very straightforward. You heard from the applicants a few moments ago as well. On this one, they are seeking to rezone from AGC 1 to AGC because AGC allows 2 dwellings on a single lot where AGC does not. So this is out on Gordon Road. It's almost 15 acres. There we go. Staff recommends approval of the item, and Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval as well. You'll see that there are agricultural future land use, and AGC 1 to AGC certainly matches that, and the zoning matches as well.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here who wishes to speak against this rezoning request? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor of the rezoning request?
Move to close.
Second.
Motion and a second to close. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion passes. Do we have a new motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? This is my district. I certainly approve this, and I appreciate you coming out to speak for that. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Rezoning action, hold a public hearing and consider first reading case number 21-07, tax map number 72000000021, 72000000023. Zoning request to rezone from RUD to BD3, 8.8 acres in District 1.
As the chair said, this application is to rezone from RUD to BD2. There's two parcels that are associated with this proposal. They are both off of Pleasant Road. Combined, they're just shy of 9 acres. So the proposal is a little bit of a unique one. They are proposing to develop an assisted living and memory care community. So this is a rendering provided by the applicant for what the development will look like. So it will encompass 6 single-story buildings. There would be 12 living units inside each of those structures, and they will also provide community space, walking paths, and gardens for the residents and visitors. So you look at the zoning map, you'll see directly across the street from Pleasant Road, there is existing BD2 property. There is daycare, some office use. There's also a school there as well. So that would be consistent with what they have proposed here. And there's some residential uses to the north and south. In the future land use designation for this will be single-family residential. Because of the proposal before you, it's a residential style of use. So it's not strictly single-family residential, but it is residential in nature. It looks residential. So staff recommends approval of this item, as does Planning Commission unanimously.
Thank you, Jonathan. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak against this rezoning? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor?
Move to close.
Second.
Motion and a second to close. Any discussion? All those,
Yeah,
Mr. Audette?
Yeah, so I just want to mention on this one, we had an opportunity to meet with several of the developments in the area and great conversations that we had, so I appreciate that. It was very good discussions around their concerns and their needs in regards to it. There was also information that we were able to, again, have the discussion along with, having a discussion with the developer too. So there's good communication back and forth with the needs and the concerns around this property. The ability to put this property as it stands here in regards to being a nursing home, but you have residents staying there, and it's really residential living and very, very low traffic going in and out of there. It is a very nice opportunity also to support the district in regards to the needs for additional nursing homes in the area and residential nursing homes. So again, thank you.
All those in favor of closing public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Do we have a new motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes. Council to hold a public hearing and consider second reading of an ordinance to amend the York County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 151, Floodplain Management, to revise the chapter titled to Flood Damage Prevention, to add a definition for non-encroachment area, NEA, to amend the use of the term floodway to include non-encroachment area, to add a definition for special flood hazard area, SFHA, to clarify specific standards where lowest adjacent grade, LAG, applies to elevated building, to amend specific standards for accessory structures, to amend the establishment of an appeal board, to amend variance requirements for accessory and agricultural structures, to amend the York County Code of Ordinance, Chapter 152, Stormwater Management and Sediment Control, to amend the duties of the Stormwater Appeals Board, to provide for a public hearing, and to provide for other matters relating thereto.
And this ordinance is addressing the floodplain regulation, or Chapter 151. This is a chapter that's required by FEMA and permits county residents to apply for flood insurance on their homes. It has to be on the books in order for them to do that. So the South Carolina DNR, they came to York County and they performed a community assistance visit, which evaluates our participation in the National Flood Insurance Program and how we are issuing permits for development in the floodplain and things like that. So they take a look at our ordinance. They noted some minor deficiencies and they asked us to address those. So that's largely what this ordinance is to change some terminology and add a definition here and there. So this ordinance will address all of those requests from DNR. And the only substantive changes to the ordinance is to retitle the chapter, so it'll be more appropriately titled the Flood Damage Prevention Ordinance, and it'll assign the Stormwater Appeals Board as the appeal body for the chapter. Currently, there is no body that would address any appeal to that chapter.
Thank you, Jonathan. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak against this ordinance revision? Anyone here who wishes to speak in favor?
Move to close.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Do we have a new motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes. Council to hold a public hearing and consider third reading of an ordinance to amend as a minor change the Lazy Hawk Road Plan Development District comprising 179.12 plus or minus acres of land owned by Tomcat 2 LLC and Cat Real Estate Holdings LLC and Blackwell Family Properties LLC and Lazy Hawk Property Owners Association, and located at Lazy Hawk Road in the Rock Hill community, referenced by tax map 617, parcels 1, 26, 77, 84, and 85 of the official zoning and development standards maps for purposes of clarifying certain aspects of the PD district and plan, including but not limited to the orientation and treatment of loading docks as included in the parking note for the PD plan, and separation of certain permitted uses from adjoining properties as included in the permitted uses note that do not alter the overall characteristics of the total plan and that create no adverse impacts on adjacent uses or public services and facilities, to provide for a public hearing and to provide for other matters relating thereto.
Okay, so this one will take me a few more minutes to get through, so please bear with me. It's a complicated issue. Before I get started, I just wanted to note that there is a Scrivener's error in the ordinance itself. Section 1.3 incorrectly states that the county manager was authorized to pursue a change on March 21st of 2021, but it should read March 1st of 2021. So the background on this minor change ordinance, it starts in April of 1998. There was an application for a light industrial rezoning on this property before the Planning Commission. They deferred decision on that application in order to require planning staff to reach out to the local community and provide notice to them and give them an opportunity to speak at a Planning Commission date to be scheduled into the future. Before that meeting occurred, on May 4th of 1998, there was a public hearing before County Council. Between 40 and 60 speakers spoke out against that application at that public hearing. So there was obviously some community concern expressed at that evening. So subsequently, on June 1st, 1998, that light industrial rezoning was withdrawn by the applicant. The applicant then reapplied for a PUD zoning. So it was a light industrial zoning. A lot of the uses in there were light industrial in nature, and it was a lot of uses were pulled out of there. And this was responsive to the community concerns. There were also some expressed protections applied to the neighboring properties, and that was approved by County Council on November 16th, 1998. So I just want to note that this rendering is the latest that the Planning Department has received. It's not part of the plan that was approved, but what was approved would have looked something like this. We do not have records of what that plan sheet would have looked like at this point in time. It's been lost to the records. So you can see we've got a couple of rows in there, a couple of phases proposed, and the protected properties would be doing the laser. So the protected properties would have been crosswinds on this side, and then some of the other properties here on the north. So the two notes that are in the development standards for the PED are at issue in this minor change request. So highlighted in that first note, this is in the parking notes section, it says, "In no case shall any lots adjacent to rear property locate loading docks parallel to the perimeter property line contiguous to Crosswind subdivision, the Nichols property, or the Haley property." And then the second note there, this is in the list of permitted uses in the district. You'll see at the bottom it says vehicle and boat repair, C note, machine stamping, punching shop, C note, freight transfer facility, C note. And that note states, uses listed above with reference to C note are not permitted on lots adjoining Crosswind subdivision, the Nichols property, or the Haley property. So moving forward in time to 2008, and February 27th, staff approved a minor change to notes to the plan. These affected phase 1, codified what was happening on that particular part of the PD. It applied performance standards to the PD, and it prohibited speakers on lots adjacent to those same reference properties. In December of 2009, a plat was recorded that subdivided off 40.6 acres of the PD into a deed-restricted open space lot. I'll show you what that looks like on the next slide. And that's important to note because it defeats the adjacency that was incorporated into the protections of the PD. On June 6, 2016, the applicant proposes to change the building height that was prescribed in the development standards, adding protections for pines that were in the buffer, and they sought to remove the, quote, ambiguous dock orientation note. On October 3rd, 2016, council approved those other changes, but opted to retain that dock orientation note. So this is that subdivision plat. So tract B is that perimeter, so that's the open space that was deeded as a separate lot. So now there is no contiguity, there's no adjacency, there's no adjoining between those protected properties and the PD at large. So moving forward into 2020, in August of last year, Oak Engineering requested a zoning interpretation letter on a sketch plan proposal for the site. It was not a submitted sketch plan, it was a posed question to the zoning administrator at the time. On October 8th, 2020, Spencer & Spencer appealed the conclusions of the zoning administrator that were described in that interpretation letter. That appeal went to the zoning board. On January 14th of this year, the ZBA voted to uphold the zoning administrator conclusions that were in that interpretation letter. So that brings us forward to today. County Council authorized the county manager to pursue clarifying changes to the approved PD. The county manager in a letter had proposed a minor change to the PD to make corrections or clarifying corrections to those notes, so there was no doubt about what they meant. Staff recommends the following text amendments to the PD notes. So in a letter that I wrote to the county manager, it describes what the planning department's position on these notes are. If it were to be changed through a minor change process and here in this public hearing, we recommend that the first of the modified notes, the parking note, read instead, in no case shall any lots orient loading docks facing the perimeter property lines of the Crosswind subdivision, the Nichols property, or the Haley property. And the two terms that are at issue here is adjacent, and that's for the reason that I discussed earlier with that subdivision. There's no longer any adjacency of those protected properties that were clearly meant to be shielded from more intense uses on the site. So there's no adjacency any longer for that protection to be remaining. And also the word parallel, it's a geometric term. It's not broadly used in zoning anywhere. You won't find it in our zoning ordinance. It's not defined in our zoning ordinance. And there's a reason for that. It's not because it's a practically understood term. It's because if you were to enforce it strictly with its very basic Merriam-Webster definition, it would be impossible to apply, saying that there would be 0 degrees separating two lines. So this note, the proposal here is trying to adhere as closely as possible to the existing language and just clarifying those two terms and the clear intent to protect those properties and going no further than that. So the second note, staff proposes to state Note, uses listed above with reference to C note are not permitted on lots located within 250 feet of the perimeter property lines of the Crosswind subdivision, the Nichols property, or the Haley property. Again, here, when you've got a use separation requirement in zoning, it is typically not lot to lot, because you might have very small lots, you might have very large lots, and you might have a subdivision that comes in between them, or you might have an easement that gets dedicated out as a separate lot. So it's very impractical to have directly adjacent be your term to prevent a certain use from being located next to another one. So instead, similar to the York County code right now, we have separation for mining operations. That would be 500 feet. So here we propose a much more reasonable 250 feet from the light industrial uses from those perimeter property lines. So that concludes my.
Thank you, Jonathan. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak against this ordinance revision? Please state your name for the record and your relationship to the applicant.
My name is Mark White. I am an attorney for the applicant. I'm an attorney for the landowner. I believe the applicant is the county manager. The fundamental problem with this process is a county government has initiated, under the guise of a minor amendment of a PD district, without once mentioning it to the owner of the property. A lot of the problems and the defect in this ordinance could have been addressed very simply had that mere common courtesy been afforded to this owner. I represent a lot of governments. I'm not aware of any time a government has attempted to compel a change, an amendment to a PUD or a PD district without at least one conversation, if not extensive back and forth, with the property owner. What you're left with is a lot of avoidable error. The ordinance that you have under consideration tonight, I would submit to you respectfully, is defective, and if challenged, would stand. I don't profess to know what judges and juries will do, but I've been doing this a while, and I submit to you that this ordinance is defective. What you're having before you is not a minor amendment. It's not even close to a minor amendment. It's not in the same ballpark as a minor amendment. What you have presented to you today is a major amendment to a PD district, which requires a rezoning. It requires all the processes of a rezoning. It requires 21 days notice to the property owner at a minimum. It requires posting. It requires action by the planning commission. It requires the preparation of certain plats, documents that we don't have here. But no, what you have is a unilateral attempt by a government, which is the collective power of many citizens, to exert a change onto a single citizen to preference other citizens. And that is a sad thing for a government to do. All the county had to do was reach out and ask. This landowner did not know about this until the 28th or 29th, when someone got a green card, a neighbor got a green card before his showed up. And that's the first that they knew about it. So when you look at this, I understand where you're zoning it, I understand what John is saying. And there's a lot of things that what John said, I think if given a different perspective, he could mull it around a little better and come up with a better conclusion for all constituencies. But instead what you have is one that's only adhering or considering one constituency, and it's not the property owner. This property owner has this property under contract for over $3 million. And you can't proceed under that contract because of action taking at the zoning level. What was missing in the recitation in your chronology was when the ZBA first considered this, they looked at the word parallel and recognized parallel as parallel. this isn't parallel, and they voted to reverse the zoning administrator's decision. Then something happened. Something changed. And ever since that changed, the constituency as this property owner has been disregarded and ignored. I have reached out personally to the county attorney on not less than 5 occasions requesting an opportunity to meet with whomever, neighbors, ZBA administrators, whoever, to try to work through this and get both perspectives considered. Nothing has happened. I reached out before this meeting when I finally found out about it and tried to have some discussions. Again, nothing. So what are you left with? We're left with a county government considering an ordinance as a minor amendment, which is not a minor amendment. Your minor amendment, all amendments to PDs are major amendments unless specifically it falls within the very few characteristics of a minor amendment. It cannot alter the overall characteristics of the total plan. If you have a total plan which allows 3 types of uses, picking 3, light industrial, commercial, residential, and you take away 2 of them, that is the alteration of the characteristics of a development. If you proceed with these changes, you will alter the characteristics. Now, I may not be able to convince you of that today, but there will be a day later in front of a judge that I will be able to convince him of that. It also, I noticed that the ordinance tries to call this parking. It's not parking. These are loading docks. There's no change in your proposals having to do with parking. It's not where the truck's sitting. It's the loading dock. And also it says under 4, it could be a minor change if it's the reorientation, but not the complete relocation of structures. This county has on its websites at least 5 renderings for economic development purposes of buildings on this property that have been on your website for over 5 years to third parties saying, hey, come buy this property and build these buildings. This is what you can do. Not one of those renderings complies with what you're doing today. None of them. Buildings will have to get moved. Uses will be altered. The highest and best use of this property will change after tonight if you pass this. So what's the landowner have to do? No one will talk to him. No one will consider his interest. So he's only left with one resort, which is to file a lawsuit trying to avoid this ordinance if you pass it. He does not wish to do that. What I ask from you today is not change course and say, oh, well, this lawyer said, so let's just change everything. No, I'm asking you to do is to hold this in abeyance and meet with the man. Have a discussion. Let your county manager and, what's his name? John, sorry. And John, let us sit down and consider from his perspective. John said something interesting. John said that in 2009, that the property was, the buffer property around this site destroyed adjacency, and the protected property was not protected any longer. That's not accurate. It protected the property completely by removing the 200-foot and the 100-foot buffers and putting them into a separately dedicated tract. If you go back and look at what was discussed in '98, a lot of what was presented to the ZBA at the second hearing was in the form of the neighbors' wish list. It was documents that they had of things that they were asking for, some of which found its way into the ordinance and some that didn't. For example, they wanted testing on some wells forever. That didn't show up. But if you notice what's in there, at no point, can we make that, can we see the property? Yeah. That's fine. So if you look at that property, at no point, if you look at the documents that the neighbors, these fine people, they're wonderful people, the ones that I know, but the documents that Mr. Nichols had, if you look at it, what you're doing, being asked to do today does not preserve what was even on their wish list in '98. It goes way farther. For example, if you look at the documents that Mr. Nichols presented from 1998, it says that a parcel, the buffer, there was a buffer, 150 feet and 200 feet, which is now what you see, the shawl around the track. And then it said that you could not have loading docks on lots that were adjacent to the three sides. Back then, it was contemplated that the buffer would be on the lots. So the removal of the buffer and the protection of it didn't change anything. If there was a lot going all the way to what was the name of it? What's the name of it? Crosswind, excuse me. If there, back in 1998, it was considered that the lots would go all the way to the property line. And they would be protected by the 200-foot buffer. And what the wish list was then is, if there was a use, a lot on that lot, say directly adjacent to Woodwind, that it wouldn't have a loading dock on the Woodwind side. If you look at those, it says that the loading docks had to face the interior of the property. So I ask you today, consider this ordinance. If you have a lot or a building, say where that dotted line is down the bottom, from that bottom corner to Mr. Nichols' property is 3,000 feet, give or take. If you look at the documents for Mr. Nichols, it would be perfectly fine on a building that's down there near that dotted line to have a loading dock on the right side of the building toward Mr. Nichols' property because it faces the interior. But not in your ordinance that you're being considered today, because that's facing. There's no proximity to it. So you have a lot that's 3,000 feet across, and you can't put a loading dock anywhere on it. You can't face them left, because that's Crosswinds. You can't face them to the top, because that's Haley. You can't face them to the right, because that's Nichols. And you can't face them toward I-77 because of one of your ordinances. Clearly, the intention of 1998 wasn't you couldn't have loading docks. It would be much simpler just to say that. No loading docks allowed on the property. That's not what it says. So what you've done is, what the proposal is that you've taken away the proximity. It's the documents from Mr. Nichols say that they either face other buildings or it faces the interior of the property. So if you look at it in context, in 1998, where the lots went all the way to the property lines, they didn't want you to put a loading dock right on top of the properties near the buffer. But you could have put it on the other side. You could put it across an interior street facing that side. But now you can't. It also says in the 250-foot, this new provision, nowhere in 1998 was anything about 250 feet. But now that's what we have. It doesn't prohibit use within the 250 feet of a lot. It voids that lot if any of it touches the 250. So now to have one of those uses that are now prohibited, not just by being adjoining with a heavy buffer, now if any part of the lot is within 250 feet all the way around, it cannot have those three uses. That is materially changing the character of this PDD. So I don't like wasting time. I'm a trial lawyer that's arguing don't make me sue. I don't want to. It's a waste of time. We can sit down, and this owner wants to get along with these gentlemen. He has great respect for most of the ones that I know of. But if you pass this, a lawsuit has to come. And I'll note for you, I told the ZBA this, your documents, your staff documents assist in the ZBA appeal. A literal interpretation and enforcement creates a result we don't like. So what I ask of you is, if you look at it, the ordinance is defective because it's not minor. This isn't about parking. The requirements absolutely require the relocation of structures. You can just go to your own website and find evidence of that. It materially alters the scope and character of the overall plan. For you to have done this, you need to do it through a major change, which is basically a rezoning. I will note for you in your own documents again, in 2016, when the owner made a request about loading docks, staff told him that was a major change. It had to go through the entire rezoning process. In 2016, when the owner was asking for something about loading docks, it was a major change. In 2021, when we have a ZBA appeal we're trying to get out ahead of, we're trying to beat it to the finish line, you know, we got that ZBA appeal, they get heard real quick. So when we're in a hurry, we don't talk to the property owner, and we say, oh, well, now it's a minor change. I would ask, not that you defer and give my client what he wants. I do ask that you give him the same consideration you give any other constituency. Hear his perspective, hear his thoughts, before you pass an ordinance. Don't make a good man file a lawsuit.
Thank you, Mr. White. Is there anyone else here who wishes to speak against this ordinance revision? Is there anyone here?
Mr. Chairman, if I could say one other thing. If there is a lawsuit, there's a statute called the Equal Access to Justice Act. If the government action is not without substantial justification, not any justification, if the government action is without substantial justification, then the party who had to file or defend the action because of the government's action is entitled to his attorney's fees paid by the government. I've already pled it in the ZBA appeal. I think it would be also in play here. I don't know what judges and juries are going to do, but I do feel I have to note that a good man just wants to talk. He wants to talk with the neighbors, he wants to talk with you. But if you push him, he'll have to file a lawsuit, and if he files it, he'll have to argue that what you've done today over a minor amendment was without substantial justification. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. White. Is there anyone here who wishes to, any other folks here who wish to speak against? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor of the ordinance revision?
Council, my name is Darren Nichols. I'm the Nichols that Mr. White referred to quite a bit. I reside at 2196 Strawberry Road in Rock Hill. I lived here all my life. I own about 2,400 square linear feet of property along the said lines we speaking of today. Back in 1998, myself along with Donnie Christopher, Robbie Haley, and Harry Johnson, at the consideration of Kerwood Chapel, we met with Joe Blanchard. And we come up with some great PUD plans where we put into place in 98. We were part of the 60 people that spoke against it. But we met with Joe, we hashed out everything. At that time, Joe knew exactly what facing away or parallel at the time. The loading docks, as citizens, we wanted the quality of life. And Kerwood had us meet with the business development. And we had everything hashed out. Joe was a great person, we got to know him. But, trying to reside there and hopefully retire there, we wanted the quality of life. We were there first. So we met with Joe quite a few times. We met with his engineer, Kiesler Engineering. Everybody knew exactly what was in the plans back then, and it shouldn't change now because a new lawyer comes into town, big money, a threatening lawsuit. Y'all shouldn't look at any of that. You should go back and look at the original. And back then, everything was fine. Everybody knew the language. Don't get threatened. I'm a business owner. I own a nickel store in Rock Hill. I appreciate business. I think, York County needs to grow, but it needs to grow with constraints. All the ordinances and the practices you already have in place need to be upheld. You don't need to bend the rules for somebody who wants to change directions. Back then, we had it developed, and they were talking about the facing away, or you can't, there's no way to put a loading dock. Back then, we had it in 3 different phases, but we had it narrowed down to, it was 3 to 5 acre lots, not a 25 acre lot, which Mr. White is trying to have one of his clients put an 850,000 square foot facility in. It's a whole change of the direction that we had put in place in '98. Just look deeper. It's not about one person, and it's not about big money trying to threaten a lawsuit. Look at the citizens of the community and what we put into place years ago. I mean, that's all I have to say.
Thank you,
Any
Mr.
questions for me?
No, we don't ask questions, but thank you, Mr. Nichols.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor?
Hello, and thank you for letting me speak today. My name is Harry Johnson. I've lived at 3591 Enterprise Drive for over 27 years. My property borders the northwest portion of the Blanchard property. I'm also, as Darren said, one of the original property owners that worked with Kerwood Chapel and Joe Blanchard in coming up with this PD. Since its inception, there have been many discussions over this PD. First, in 1998, there was the confirmation by the Blanchard site engineer, Jim Kiesler, that the loading dock positions would be facing away from the residential boundaries. In 2016, the York County Planning and Development opposed the removal of language restricting loading dock orientation towards residential areas, as this removal will negatively affect surrounding neighbors. And then most recently in 2020, there was an attempt to define and exploit a word that, although ambiguous, had a very specific initial intent. The ambiguous word was parallel, is parallel, and the initial intent was to protect the nearby neighbor's quality of life. A quality of life that would be destroyed from loading docks facing their property. Each time, York County did the right thing by confirming the surrounding property owners and Joe Blanchard's design, loading docks away from the boundaries. Now, York County is once again doing the right thing, protecting its citizens by clarifying the PD so there is absolutely no chance for ambiguity. The right thing, protecting the citizens, is exactly what happened each time since 1998 and was confirmed by the Zoning Board of Appeals in a unanimous decision in January 2021. The neighbors of the Blanchard property certainly appreciate the continued efforts of York County to protect and to be good stewards of the county and its citizens. And then regarding the buffer area that is owned by a separate party, I think we all understand that it was only undertaken to avoid or exclude any clauses dealing with adjacent property owners. It's a rather underhanded action that should be corrected to again preserve the initial intent of the PD, which is the protection of the neighboring property owners. Thank you for everything you've done and all the work you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anyone else wish to speak in favor?
Good evening. My name is Sandra Spicer. I live at 3587 Enterprise Drive, which is in the Crosswinds development. We built our house 2 years ago, became York County residents 2 years ago. And what I can speak towards this, I don't know if you've actually seen the building, and it stretches top to bottom. In the one corner, my property is next to Mr. Johnson's. When you look at that, those proposed loading docks are in my backyard. In December, when the property was being surveyed behind us, I could hear the equipment. They had this massive machine back there that was taking things down, and I can see the pink tabs hanging off the trees from my back porch. So if I can just hear that on my back porch, a facility that is 800,000 plus square feet is like an Amazon distribution center. It's a huge distribution center. That's a 24/7 operation. That you're gonna have forklifts, you're gonna have 18-wheelers, you're in and out. That I'm gonna hear that. And so if it doesn't go through and we don't maintain what was promised from 1998 till now, that there won't be loading docks facing the residential, my property value is gonna drop, my sleep's gonna drop, my dogs are gonna go crazy, and it's gonna have an impact not just on me, but everybody that goes from that corner down to the cul-de-sac, because that's the length of that building. That's huge. And to have those loading docks on that side, up where I live, is gonna be a big impact if it goes through and they're allowed to put those loading docks in. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else who wishes to speak in favor?
Good evening, my name is Robert Haley. I live at 3425 Marshall Road, and I'm the Haley that was referred to earlier on the boundary of the property. I was involved with those meetings initially with Joe Blanchard, Mr. Nichols, Mr. Christopher, and Mr. Johnson, and it was clear the intent was to protect the existing property owners from the lights, the noise, anything associated with loading docks facing our properties. The choice of the word parallel was not a good one, obviously. I would just like to thank the council for the good sense to acknowledge that and to recommend that change and the courage to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else who wishes to speak in favor?
Move to close.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of closing public hearing, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes. Do we have any motion?
Move to approve.
I would ask that that motion to approve included the correction of that Scrivener's error that Mr. Bono noted in his presentation.
I did not make a note of that, but can we just say it like that?
Section 1.3 should read March 1st, 2021.
Move to approve with the correction noted by the zoning administrator. I don't know how
Is
to
that sufficient, Michael?
Move to approve with with that amendment, yes.
Motion, is there a second?
I'll second for discussion. I have some questions.
We have a motion and a second. I guess this is my district, so I'd like to go ahead and speak first if council doesn't mind that. This is something that was something that council recommended that we do, our legal counsel. My understanding is it was published and we followed the minor revision notice requirements. I support the ordinance revision, and I do because it fixes an error that clearly the overwhelming amount of documents, witnesses, and evidence show was intended by the wording on that. It is a minor change, relying on our council to do that, and I think this council is aware of the history of what occurred with the variance board as well. So I'm asking that council support approval.
So I made the motion. First of all, let me say that there's not any threat of a lawsuit that will keep me from doing what I feel is right on behalf of the residents of York County. That's first and foremost. Number two is I think this is more of an amendment, more of a clarification than an amendment. It is very obvious to me that a group of people got together and wanted to protect their properties. I mean, it happens today. It happens all the time. People get together and they come up with a way to keep things from looking bad, keep things from affecting their quality of life. And it is, I mean, it's more than obvious that that's what these folks did. And I've never heard of anybody having to contact a county attorney to meet with neighbors. That just doesn't happen in my district. So I don't know if there's a different rule over in that district, but I mean, if a neighbor wants to meet, you pick up the phone, you call them, you drive over, you pull in their driveway, you meet them at their mailbox, you find a way to meet with the people. And so I just, I am 100% for this, for fixing this at this point.
As staff was making its presentation, I was kind of making some notes of what I thought was going on. And my initial one, even before the attorney got up and spoke, and I'll just read my notes over to the side, limits use of property. Obviously, it's going to restrict some uses simply because of the location of what I'm trying to figure out where this building would sit and where the loading docks will be proposed to sit. And I think it will help me in my understanding, where is this building? Which side is the loading docks on? Which side would they be proposed to be on? Do we have any slide that shows any of that? Okay. I don't know if we'll be able to get that on the screen, but Okay. And the one thing that did impress me was that some of these things were already worked out even back in the 90s. Someone saw the fortitude to go ahead and lay some things out, regardless of if there was someone at the time looking to purchase the property. But here we are, obviously 20-plus years down the road, and we're just getting to a possible sale, which I understand someone has a potential contract waiting, maybe contingent on what's decided here. And obviously, we try to do what's right for both parties. Protect the neighbors and also try to meet somewhere in the middle with whether it's a potential buyer or potential landowner in the future. And I heard the reference to Kerwood Chapel many, many times in the presentation. And one thing Kerwood Chapel always stood for was, you're not telling me what I can do with my property. You know, he would tell you, a man doesn't have a right to tell me what I can do with my property if I pay for it and pay the taxes on it. We have a little bit of Kerwood Chapel in this, and at the same time, Kerwood also stood up for surrounding property owners. He just didn't make it all one-sided. He tried to balance things out among both parties. And to hear his name mentioned, and I know if I can't imagine what he would say if he was still sitting up here today about this case, but he's always been a man that I've known to be fair, and for him to be involved in this process, and for the neighbors to have worked with him and others with the staff at the time. You know, this is, for me, it'd be hard for me to say yay or nay on this final reading without knowing where the building's gonna sit, which side, how far away, because if a loading dock was even facing the middle, that fork truck is still gonna make the same sound, that 18-wheeler is gonna make the same sound going in and out the property. So I would be kind of concerned as to how close to the property line can it be? And I think I heard something about 250. If any parts of it touches 250 feet, then that use probably couldn't be used. And just hearing both sides of the presentation, and I don't feel the threat of a lawsuit will affect how I vote on this. And if one side is saying, hey, we can work this out, I like to see them work it out. Does this mean slowing it down to the point that it doesn't get done? If we defer it or delay it tonight, does that mean we want to approve it in 2 weeks? I think it gives the opportunity for the two sides to meet and still work some things out. If I had to vote right now tonight, I would probably either sustain from voting or move to delay it and at least respect the opportunity for the two sides to meet up. If the attorney wants to meet with staff, our planning staff, our county management staff, we're not in a rush to say yea or nay. I think we can make a decision too soon, and I don't think we can make one too late. So if I had to have my wish, it would be to delay it, give the opportunity so that no one can come back and say we rushed to a decision. And if a lawsuit does follow up, at least we can still look everybody in the eye and say we gave it the additional time that was asked for. And if a lawsuit comes out of it after that, then so be it. But I don't think we have anything to gain today by approving it today, and I don't think we have anything to lose by approving it today. So I would ask that we defer this until the attorney gets some time that he feels he needs, and if he wants to try to work with the staff or the community, give him that opportunity.
Any other discussion?
I guess I'll just say, you know, we've had a lot of conversations with our county attorney and about this and different times, and you know, this has been a pretty long, drawn out process, and you know, I never have liked the terms major and minor, because, you know, what's minor to me may affect you differently, and it may be major to you. So major and minor has always been one of those things that to me is kind of ambiguous, and that is not a good term to use in a legal document, in my opinion. And you know, it may be when it comes down to it that that's something that the attorney gets to figure out, or excuse me, a judge gets to figure out with the attorneys arguing it. You know, from what I've seen, I think, you know, there's been so many changes on this thing over the years with splitting off the 40-acre tract and, you know, whether that's to try to put in a buffer or to try to get rid of the adjacency. Don't know what, you know, I wasn't there. I'm not the applicant. I don't know what the meaning was, but, you know, it opens up some questions. You know, so I will support this at third reading. One thing that I found over the years in being in business myself, and I know Mr. Nichols has probably seen it, and being in government, is lawsuits happen. You know, it's part of being in business and being in government. Sometimes you're going to have to do things that people don't like, and sometimes they're going to sue you. We try to do what we think is best and let the rest of it work out, so the threat of a lawsuit doesn't affect my vote either way. You know, I believe this is what's best for the neighbors, and I believe it just clarifies some misunderstandings or some misinterpretations, although I never really thought, you know, parallel was that hard to understand either. So I do support this evening.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I want to say my approach has always been to defer to the person who was elected to represent their district. Christie was elected to represent her district, and I think that's exactly what she's doing. So if you're for it, I'll support it.
Yeah, I think clarity of documentation's incredibly important, and I'm here to support this. Thank you.
Any other discussion? I will just say, I think Mr. Roddy makes some good points. I think at some point, amending the PUD generally may be in order, but tonight I think we're fixing an error that needs to be fixed, and it's a minor amendment, and I support it. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Now we move to new business. Council to consider first reading by title only of an ordinance to establish operating and capital budgets for the operation of the county government of York County for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2021, to provide for the levy of taxes for York County for the fiscal year commencing July 1, 2021, to provide for the expenditure of tax revenues and other county funds, and provide for other fiscal matters relating to county government.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Before we get into discussion, are there any comments from Mr. Madden on the budget?
A few things I want to discuss that have changed since our the last workshop we talked about this. The Bethel Lake Wiley Preservation Fund, they had a meeting. A recommended millage was developed, and that is now incorporated in the budget. The Lake Wiley Field Day Park Fund, we've met with some of the large municipalities in the county and discussed their ability to participate in that allocation of the rec funding. I don't think anybody was terribly thrilled about it. They do meet the requirements to receive a portion of that funding. So sort of the mutual agreement, this was not again with all 9, just the major municipalities. The Field Day Park is going to get the incremental increase in the value of a mill for this year. Everybody else is going to be kept at where they were at last year. And then starting in July, that district, along with, I think Mr. Moore is going to meet with the coalition, and they're going to work on figuring out another way to slice that pie going into next year. So we've got past the challenge of this year, and it is resulting in a 0.4 mil reduction for that tax district as well. So that's good news. York County is going to have to increase the sewer rates. We're simply passing along the sewer rate increase by the city of Rock Hill. We can't get behind the curve and keep it. Remember last year we had rates increase in water and sewer. We absorbed those rate increases. We just can't continue to do that. So we're passing along the rate increase from the city of Rock Hill. And also just a reminder, before third reading, and this is what we talked about in our retreat back in February, we're going to come up with a dollar amount that we're going to transfer the general fund into the capital projects fund to fund our capital project needs that we went over the 10-year capital plan. There will come a time down the road where we're going to have to increase our millage to fund those capital projects. I'm quite certain of that. Hopefully it's further away than it is right now, but that time will come, but we want to make sure until we have to, we don't raise those taxes. So any surplus we might have or any extra cushion we have in the general fund, we're going to move that money across over there to fund those projects at this time. We'll keep you updated on that every year, and we discuss our 10-year capital plan and where we think the general fund's going to end as well. Those are the changes since our last workshop, but any other questions y'all might have, welcome to discuss those.
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead at this point. I'd like to make an amendment on this. The $300,000 that are in the H-tax currently allocated to the CBV be directed towards the county's capital project parks for parks.
Second.
We have an amendment and a second to the amendment, so we now will discuss the amendment. Or is there any discussion? You made the motion to amend. Would you like to add anything else? Or?
Yeah, so any opportunity we have to save taxpayer dollars is critically important. We've got capital costs coming up in our parks. This is a direct way to be able to help support those capital costs and save the taxpayers' dollars. On Saturday, we went to a great event at Ebenezer Park, and that was directly supported by H-Tax, and it's a beautiful park. I think we've got a great opportunity again to support our capital needs, to keep taxes low, and to help both the public and the needs for our capital expenditure on the parks.
Mr. Winkler?
I will not support this evening for a number of reasons. I'll just start out with a few. The first one being, this is first reading and title only, and we have the CVB scheduled to come and speak before us at a future meeting. And, if we're gonna cut their funding out tonight, then we might as well tell them not to bother coming to speak to us at the next meeting. To cut it on a first reading when they haven't even had the opportunity to present their budget yet is ridiculous, in my opinion. I think we're totally getting things backwards and being, very unfair to the organization. I'm glad to hear you mention Ebenezer Park, because who else helped with Ebenezer Park and the grand opening this weekend was the CVB. I don't know about y'all, but I got emails, I got my app on my phone, which I carry with me all the time, that has things to do in York County that CVB does. And they blasted it out and invited people and had people there to see it and to participate in it. That's what they do. We take this $300,000 from them, which, for a little history for the newer council members here, at one point, the CVB got close to $860,000 from us in hospitality tax. And over the last several years, they've been cut down to $300,000, and we're pretty much told by council, we were gonna leave them alone at that point. They've come up with some other funding through their hotel programs in the municipalities and the incorporated areas to help fund for things that we cut their funding on. But the way that works is, if I own a hotel in Rock Hill, the agreement with that hotel from the CVB is that they collect a fee for each night that somebody stays there, and that money is spent back in that incorporated area to help that hotel. So they've got funding for these incorporated areas to help with events going on there. The $300,000 that we give them is to help them with marketing and funding for unincorporated areas, which I know that doesn't affect you a whole lot, probably not you too much, but it affects me. It affects Christy and it affects Allison. We're the unincorporated part of the county. And if they can't use that hotel money to advertise for us, and we pull what we give them to advertise for us, then the CVB will not be doing anything, not be able to do anything to help us in the unincorporated area. And that includes Riverbend Park, which is unincorporated. We're going to use $300,000. I would like to see specifically from county management, if we go forward with this, exactly what that $300,000 is going to be spent on. I know we got a list of capital projects for the next 10 years, but that's kind of a general thing. I'd like for us to see exactly what this $300,000 is going to be spent on if we pull it from the CVB, and know where that is, because I want to know what that $300,000 is going to, do there if it's a capital project, what's that gonna do to help bring people to Riverbend? Nothing. If we put the 300,000 in a capital project, they're the people that bring the people to Riverbend. They're the people that will bring them to Worth Mountain, which I was very disappointed to learn over the weekend. Thank you for posting a link to the county website for all the parks. The only problem is all the parks aren't even on the county's website. We own 1,700 acres on the Broad River that we've owned for 20 years or more. So the 1,900 acres on the Catawba is not the county's first endeavor into a county property and a large purchase on a scenic river. We're one of the few counties that are bordered with 2 scenic rivers. We've had a large parcel of land for over 20 years that's not even on our county website. That's an embarrassment. But I'm pretty sure in the last few years, there was some events, some hunting events and some different things that went on that the CVB marketed for us out that way. I know they market for us at Brattonsville. They've marketed fishing tournaments in Lake Wiley. They've marketed other things on this side of the county. They market, matter of fact, today I heard from my appointee to the board, who is one of the owners of Bush and Vine, a local family-owned farm and business here in District 3. And when they have a pumpkin picking thing and hay rides and all that stuff, the CVB puts it out to everybody. They get people in from North Carolina that come down during school for field trips and stuff to Black's Peaches that was here tonight. They do the same thing for them. They will not be able to keep doing that if we pull this 300,000 because they can't take money from a hotel in Fort Mill or Rock Hill or somewhere else and spend it to get people out in the western part of the county or the unincorporated parts of the county. We need to keep their funding whole at this point, and I will not in any way support cutting them anymore. We've cut them from $860,000 from the county to there. And we say that we name the people to their board. Matter of fact, we're gonna vote on a couple more here in just a little bit tonight to put on their board. We control 100% of their board. And if we cut this 300,000, we're gonna control about 3% of their budget. That is wrong.
So I'd like to
If, let's allow the rest of the council to talk and we'll circle back around if we need to.
So, that's just, it boggles my mind that we're doing this. When we look at all the things that the CVB does for the unincorporated area and the incorporated area, and every time we've cut them, Billy has gone out and figured out some way to keep funding going, but unfortunately, there's not a lot of hotels in the unincorporated area for them to collect fees from. There's none in District 3. So they have no way of collecting. They do now, since Billy's been on board, collect a little bit of accommodation, I think, maybe H-tax from the city of York, I'm not sure which, to help market things in the city of York. But again, that doesn't help the unincorporated area. I think we're being extremely short-sighted if we pull this and put it into a capital project for a park that we own and cannot do anything to market that project because we're cutting all the funding for marketing. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Winkler. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I'd say, I'm not for supporting this either. As a business owner, you always budget for advertising. And the way that I see their funds being spent is to bring people. It's great to have parks, but we need to advertise the parks in order to get people to come back, to stay, to continue to collect that tax revenue. And with the money already being cut by, Mr. Winkler said, $500,000 so far. If from my understanding, this 300,000 is the last bit of money that they have. And it doesn't make sense to me at this time. I've heard good arguments both sides, but I haven't heard enough to convince me to support this yet.
Mr. Roddy?
Well, just to go back to, I've been here for quite a while, and yes, it's true that over the years, we've seen the budget coming from us seems to go down, but at the same token, Bill has reinvented what the CVB does, how it operates, and replace those funds. And I think we told him a couple of years ago when we decided to make one of the bigger cuts is that the way you're setting up with the hotels, you're gonna see more and more, this fund is probably gonna outpace what we were given prior to the cut. And so when we got down to the $300,000, and to hear, I think it was last year was the first year that the CVB partnered with the city of Rock Hill, and we gave up, kept his budget at about 300,000, and it was kind of a, let's see how it works before we are totally sold on it. But when we cut a check for $300,000, and to hear that the city of Rock Hill is going to charge the CVB exactly $300,000 to partner with them to put CVB's name on events that are coming to town, it was kind of a, well, that didn't really go over too well with some members up here, because we gave $300,000 to the CVB. The CVB turns and gives $300,000 to the city of Rock Hill. I would much rather see what the CVB can do with those $300,000 on its own. And if Rock Hill don't want to partner with us to help us promote its own events, then they should kind of be separate. Because I know it didn't leave a good taste in several people's mouth last year when they got the same exact dollar amount that we cut the check for. It just looks like the CVB was being used as a pass-through to collect $300,000 from York County, in which we already give rec funds and things like that. And we hear about partnering with. Well, if the city doesn't want to partner with the CVB without taking $300,000 out of its budget, then maybe we don't need Rock Hill to partner with us, because we have a strong advertising arm in the CVB. And I think I got a call today, and it was in support of keeping that money with the CVB. And one of the things I told the caller was that it didn't sit well with me for Rock Hill just to get the same $300,000 that we stroked the check for the CVB. I would like to see more of what the CVB can do with that money without handing it over to Rock Hill. I mean, we have a great outfit with the CVB. I think Billy's done a great job of being able to replenish those funds his budget's been cut by. And I've seen the staff growing. You know, the staff was, you would think if we cut a budget $500,000 plus over the last several years, one thing that you start to look for is staff size going down, but that hasn't been the case. You know, we have equal, if not more, staff today with a smaller budget that we're given than he had when he had a lot of funding from the county. So it's not the money he's missing from us that's not enabling him to do what he's doing. I just didn't like the fact that we stroke a check. That check is basically handed over to Rock Hill to say, we have a partnership with Rock Hill. It just didn't sit well with me. And it just seems like we're supporting Rock Hill with $300,000 versus supporting the CVB. And advertising, you know, Robert says that he won't be able to advertise the unincorporated areas without the $300,000. Well, he doesn't have the $300,000 anyway. He gives that check to the city of Rock Hill. How does that benefit the unincorporated areas? If he's giving that same check that we're giving him over to the city of Rock Hill, where does he get the money to now advertise the unincorporated areas? He's coming up with it some way, somehow. I would just want to see Billy use that $300,000 in his own coffers and be able to come back and say, hey, this is where I spent money to recruit this event. This is where I spent money to advertise this event. And if we have to do a portion of that to partner with Rock Hill, but I don't want to see Rock Hill waiting after we approve a budget saying, give me the money, give me the same $300 that they just gave you. Puts you back on zero. Now you have to start over with the hotels. We all are very familiar what goes on in Rock Hill and York County. And we think that you can utilize the funds to promote York County versus giving it to Rock Hill to promote York County. So if you can tighten up on that, it makes for a lot better use and a lot better sense of what we're doing with our taxpayers' money.
Christie, could I address, since I was named, could I address one thing?
If you can make it one sentence, we can get through it.
I can't do it in one sentence. If you hold me to that, I can't address it.
Give them two.
All right, you can have two.
Two things. One, when we cut them, The 300,000 still is used in the incorporated area. Billy did go out when we cut them and found a way to replace it with the hotel program. And the money from the hotel program that's collected in Rock Hill is what goes directly to the city of Rock Hill, not the 300,000 for us. That's a separate bucket. That's what is used to partner with the city of Rock Hill, is the money they collect from the hotel program. Our 300,000 is still for us in the unincorporated area. And the other thing I wanted to clarify very quickly for Councilmember Guffey is this is not 100% of what they get from us. They do get a very small, well, not small to me probably, but small in the grand scheme of things, token amount of accommodations tax from us. Nowhere near 300,000. That's a small amount, but they do get a small amount of accommodations tax from us for the 3 or 4 hotels that are in the Carowinds area that collect a little bit. They don't have the hotel program, but they collect accommodations tax, so they get a little bit from us for that. I'm done.
Ms. Love, before I begin, Kevin, can you tell us what taxes they do receive from the county? Just to clarify what that accommodation tax is. Do you know?
They receive hospitality taxes and they receive accommodation taxes. The accommodation taxes, you have 2 buckets in the accommodation tax. You have state and local. There are marketing designees, so they're required to get 30% of our state accommodation taxes. We're not required to give them any of the local together, and they've got the same amount they had last year, and I think that's $77,000 they get in state and local accommodation taxes.
That's state and local?
Yes, ma'am.
So I have a hard time with the CVB, and I'm just gonna put it out here. Because I got a phone call today too. And the person that I was talking to is a board member, and I just want to say this first. When I appoint somebody, make a recommendation to appoint somebody to this, make a recommendation for council to appoint somebody to a board, what I want to see that person do is hold whatever that group is, whoever that board supports. I want that person to not just become a supportive person for that group. I want them to hold them accountable for taxpayer dollars. So these taxes, these H taxes are a large part of those. They're collected in Councilman Audette's area and in my area. And, you know, a lot of the things that are promoted by the CVB are things that are already going on. I could start up my own CVB and just copy everybody's ads and put it all out there, and it might take me a little while to learn where to put them all, but it's marketing. It's marketing. And if somebody, I told the person that called me today, and I'm sure you all be hearing from them because I told them what I thought. But if somebody came to me in my business and said, we'd like for you to advertise in this magazine, and it's going to cost you $500, but we're going to run that ad, this magazine's going to go to Chester. I'm not going to advertise in that. So what I feel like happens is, I feel like I'm speaking on behalf of the taxpayers in District 2 and also in Mr. Winkler's district. Because the money those taxpayers pay, even though there are fewer restaurants and things there, we have a large unincorporated area of Lake Wiley with a lot of restaurants. We are bringing in H dollars, big time. And I want that, if we give that to you, you're that magazine that I'm speaking of, I'm gonna get my money's worth from that magazine, or I'm not gonna advertise in that magazine. So I don't see things coming back to the Lake Wiley and Clover areas from the CVB. I see a ton going to Rock Hill. And for a lot of years, I don't know what Rock Hill gives you now, but for a lot of years, you were getting $800,000 from the county. It was $1.2 million when I got on council, by the way. $800,000 from the county and $80,000 from the city of Rock Hill. What's wrong with that picture? Because we weren't getting the bulk of the ads. We weren't getting the bulk of the marketing in the unincorporated areas. And I'm speaking for all of the unincorporated areas. I mean, how long has, Councilman Roddy tried to get the Football City USA somewhere? Market that if you want to market something. I think that's a great lure to the city of Rock Hill. But I want to get my money's worth. I want to get my taxpayers' money's worth. These fishing tournaments, that was a statewide. I'm going to ask you, can I ask a question of Billy?
I don't think we're asking questions at this point.
Well, I'm going to ask you a hypothetical question. A statewide high school fishing tournament came to Lake Wiley. I don't know if the CVB was responsible for bringing that to Lake Wiley or not, but I don't think they were. And And I'm just gonna tell you something else that rubbed me the wrong way, and, you know, I'm happy to talk anytime off the record. But I posted on my Facebook page about the Bethel Volunteer Fire Department showing up out there at that fishing tournament at 6 a.m. It's dark, to put that flag up. And when I posted that on my Facebook page, it was not about me, and it was not about the CVB. It was about a fishing tournament and a group of volunteer firemen that got up really early to be there and to raise that flag. And when I posted that on my Facebook page, the CVB took credit for having them there. And that just rubbed me the wrong way. And it's still there. You can look at it. And I thought, you know what? You didn't make that happen either. So as far as I'm concerned, the $300,000 is not warranted. You sat on the front row the last time when we reduced it from 800 to 300, and I said, you're going to be okay, Billy, and you're going to be okay. You're always going to be okay. There's more and more money coming in. And if you look back at the St. Patrick's Day Festival that's a big deal in Clover that they do. They say, you know, hey, go. But the chamber advertises that. We haven't had one for the past 2 years. So we've paid $300,000, a portion of that, I'm assuming, to market things that haven't even happened for 2 years now. If they happened between January and May, they haven't even happened in the past 2 years. So, I mean, I'm just so not convinced that this money could be spent another way on behalf of the taxpayers. There are a lot of other groups that used to come to the county for hospitality dollars. You know what? They don't get any anymore. And so they're struggling too. But I mean, I just don't understand. And when you say, you know, we're not going to have any marketing in the county, I mean, why? You know, Rock Hill only paid $80,000, and they got tons of marketing. So I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not an advocate. And maybe at some point in time I can be convinced, but at this point I just don't see the return on the investment. Mr. Hamilton.
For all the reasons Councilman Winkler stated, I can't in good conscience vote to cut the budget of the entity who's in charge of marketing events to the unincorporated areas. Rock Hill and Fort Mill would be the only ones to benefit if we were to cut everyone else's budget, so we can't market events elsewhere in the county. But more importantly, speaking of taxpayers in this county, our agenda tonight specifically states that we're to consider first reading by title only. And here we are considering an amendment to change how we're spending money when we told the public they didn't have to bother showing up tonight because we're not going to have a public hearing. And to me, the most important thing that we do is spend taxpayer dollars, and that requires the highest degree of transparency. And if we're going to be having this debate, I think it's shameful that we're having it on a night when we tell the public prior to the meeting that we're just going to do first reading by title only, and that's it. And don't bother coming. We're not noticing you for a public hearing. So I think the timing of the amendment is perhaps the larger issue. And because I think it just lacks transparency with how we advertised and how we noticed this meeting, I can't in good conscience support it.
Mr. Kinder, do we have an issue with do you need clarification on the motion?
Yes, so I believe the first reading by title only precludes a substantive amendment to the ordinance itself at this reading. It would be more appropriate for second reading.
So Tom, would you consider
Well,
removing?
I think at this point, what I'd like to do is go ahead and at least put my comments on the records, because I think it's more important that that let everybody kind of know where folks stand sooner rather than later. To me, that's probably the better approach. And if what we need to do is to retract the motion, I still think it's important that, you know, folks know where council members are coming from. I do support reducing and redirecting the funds to the parks, and here's why. And I don't think it has anything to do, I don't think any one of us up here wants to harm CVB. It is not territorial for me. It's not about the city of Rock Hill and those funding. To me, it's about the best way that we use our HTAX money that benefits our taxpayers and that supports the businesses who pay into them. The money that we're talking about is the 2% that's assessed on the unincorporated small businesses. So none of the money that is in, this is only relates to the tax that the businesses in the unincorporated area collect. And if any of my numbers are wrong and we get to second reading and there's the presentation and I would like to be corrected on these things, but I asked some questions about it because this has been a discussion that the council has had for a long time. We, in my mind, we had a course of action where we were eliminating this and we were trying to change the funding. So number one, I don't think any council member is suggesting that we eliminate funding to CVB. It's that we redirect it and keep the accommodations tax money, which is the heads and beds money. That makes sense to do that. But to reduce the H-tax to really be more in line with what the rest of the entities and governments are doing, especially the ones that are successful. I mean, my understanding is City of Rock Hill uses their H-tax funding to support their park system, and they don't use their H-tax money to support CVB marketing. They obviously know what they're doing. They've been doing a good job of working with that. But some of the numbers that I understand is that the total revenues that were coming from the county to the CVB were $1.5 million back in 2019. And of that amount, about $900,000 was being paid for through H-tax. Today, the revenues, even if you eliminated all of it and we were able to redirect the funds, it wouldn't be cutting the CVB at all. The CVB still has $1.5 million of revenue that is coming in, and I think that's a good thing. I think that's a testament to what has been done to make sure that we find a private source to fund what needs to be funded with the CVB, but allows us now to take an opportunity to maybe use those dollars to invest in the park system. Our council had a strategic plan where we said that we want to invest in the park system. I mean, unless we're going to raise taxes, this is one of the best ways to do that, is to start using that funding there. I just believe that this is the best redirection of those funds. I certainly am very cognizant of what Mr. Winkler has said, and we need to make sure that if this happens, that the CVB doesn't somehow drop any of the marketing for the western side. I can't imagine that would happen because we would still be providing funding through A-tax, but I think I wanted to make sure that I got my comments out there so that, when we do have the next reading, at least, you've heard my comments and folks can comment on that. At this time, Mr. Audette, will you withdraw your amendment?
Yeah, I'd first like to say, again, based on, what I saw structure-wise at Ebenezer and what those H-tax did to build out patios and docks, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And to do that, and be able to do that with the H-tax for savings to our public I thought was a phenomenal choice on how to support that. Based on our legal counsel, I will retract it, this amendment, and then re-request it on second reading.
Yes, sir. So we are now back to our original motion to approve the budget, first reading by title only. Is there any other discussion on that? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Council to consider approval of nominated applicants and consider nominations from the floor for service for boards and commissions from the Finance and Operations Committee meeting on April 19th, 2021. Joel Wood, York County Natural Gas Board. Robin Peterson, Keep York County Beautiful, District 1. Lisa Mosley, Rock Hill, York County Convention and Visitors Bureau at large. Sandra Calhoun White, Catawba Mental Health Board. Victoria Knopf, Catawba Mental Health Board. James Spratt, Riverview Fire District Board. Don Clark, Rock Hill, York County Airport Commission. And Duncan Alford, Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee.
Move to approve.
I have a floor nomination.
Okay, why don't we have an approval of the ones that we agree on? And I would suggest that the motion reflect, my understanding is that there may be some discussion and need to be some discussion on the Natural Gas Board appointment. And so for that reason, I would request that the motion be changed to reflect that we approve all but that one.
All right, I'll second that one.
Is that bumps?
Yeah.
All right, I'll agree to amend it to approve all but that one.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second to approve all but the Natural Gas Board appointee. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Now we'll move to the appointment for the Natural Gas Board.
I would like to make a floor nomination for Mr. Billy Hagner to the York County Natural Gas Board.
Second.
And I guess as the Chair of Finance and Operations, I will make the motion to follow Finance and Operations recommendation for Joel Wood.
We have 2 nominations. Are there any other nominations for the position of Natural Gas Board? I'll declare that the nominations have been closed, and we will have the vote, just so council members know how this works. I will ask you if you would approve Joel Woods for this position. You vote once, and then you do not vote again, and then I will ask the question of if you support Billy Hagner for the position.
And can the nominating, or should the nominating council members give the reason or background on who they're recommending so that because I don't know if everybody up here knows both the nominees, so.
I'm certainly fine with you all having that discussion, the ones who nominated them to give a statement.
You want to go first, Bump, since you went first?
Hey, winners always go first. Well, I'm nominating Mr. Billy Hagner. To me, he's a great gentleman. I've had the opportunity to work with him out at Bowater when he was there. I currently work with his son. He's a good man in the community. He's very thorough. He doesn't really pick the sides, left or right. He's straight down the middle. He's been before us on numerous occasions to show his support for things that we've done. He's been before us on numerous occasions and let us know when we're not doing it right. So I think he will be a fair appointee to the board to hold them accountable and look out for the public's best interest. So that's why he come to me as a nomination for the Natural Gas Board.
Thank you. And for me, Joel Wood is my nominee. It's who came out of Finance and Operations. I know Mr. Hagner. I think he's a fine man. I appreciate his willingness to volunteer. He served the county on multiple boards and commissions in different ways in the past. And you know, thank goodness he's willing to do that and got the time to do that. But the York County Natural Gas Board is a very important board. It's a board that, you know, helps support the county in economic development and where gas lines go and infrastructure, which is a huge thing to the county. And, you know, you're right, costs and that type of thing need to come into consideration when we look at that. And Mr. Wood is a current active practicing civil engineer with a civil engineer business here in York County. And who can better understand the costs of the infrastructure and where the infrastructure needs to be and what goes into putting in that infrastructure than a current practicing civil engineer who works in that and has his hand in it every day. That's why I think both are great candidates, and nothing against Mr. Hagner, but I think Mr. Wood is the better candidate in this situation.
Thank you, Mr. Winkler. At this time, I will ask the council who approves of Billy Hagner to serve in the position of the Natural Gas Board. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All of those who support Joel Wood, you say aye.
Aye.
And at this point, I think it's more appropriate that we have a motion to approve Mr. Hagner since the nomination's carried. So is there a motion to approve Mr. Hagner to fill the position of the Natural Gas Board?
Move to approve Billy Hagner.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Motion passes. Do we have any committee and other reports? I don't believe we do. Are there any council member new non-agenda comments?
I just want to thank everyone for coming out to Ebenezer Park. It was wonderful. I actually stayed the weekend out there. So just to get to see so many people, and thank you to our staff. I think really went above and beyond management. And I know I said this on social media, but I want to say it publicly. While I was able to enjoy it, really the thanks goes to previous council, Dr. Blackwell, Michael Johnson sitting up here. and getting that approved, so.
You left me out,
Thank you.
Brandon. You
Well,
left
you
me
were
out.
Me
part-
too.
You're here still.
We were here.
So.
Me and Robert were here too. Thank
Have
you,
a-
Brandon. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Mr. Roddy?
Okay, I had the pleasure of going out and touring Legion Collegiate Academy today. They invited me out, take a look at the nice facility. Legion's only been around for about 19 months, and they've been able to erect a school, nice small campus, real intimate. They're doing a good job of educating our kids in the community, and it's a different, it's an alternative to the traditional school setting. They're growing, they're just getting started. I think the maximum school size they can have is around 600 students, so it's going to be real small. Great program academically as well as athletically. One thing that they definitely wanted to mention to me is that since we're looking to enhance our park access throughout York County, they're now entering the phase of putting up their soccer, softball, baseball, and getting their athletic fields put in place. And they reached out to me, and they know we're starting to go down the road of looking into our parks throughout York County. And one thing that they have to offer is they have the total acreage of their school facility, I think is about 80 plus acres. And so they have a lot of untapped land that they're looking to get some rec fields and sports field on. And they pointed out to me that this will be another amenity to York County. So they reached out to me and asked, how can they start the conversation with York County to partner with York County to help out with their sports fields and facilities. And I also pointed out that if they're able to allow the community as well as the CVB to market the use of their fields with all the tournaments and things that's coming to town, that could possibly be a good fit. So I'll be working with staff to find out which committee we go to for them to come and have a presentation to present some things to the county about incorporating the use of their fields into the public's use, as well as allowing York County and the CVB, and whether it's the city gets on boards to bring tournaments and stuff. They believe in green space and allowing the parks and fields to be used at times where the school won't be using it. So we'll be trying to get that conversation going. I think it'll be a great addition to the south side of Rock Hill, to where we don't have any sports and rec fields or walking trails located on the south side. And they're looking to kind of bring all that together on their campus, where your traditional school campuses are closed to outside use. They're looking to have external uses to their sports field. So I'm real excited. That was my first time visiting with them. But I'll definitely be back again to support the school and see what they have to offer.
Thank you, Mr. Roddy. Any others?
Thank you, Jonathan, for your presentations tonight. That is definitely an added benefit to the people who come and are waiting and watching, and they don't know what else is going on, so everything seems like a foreign language to them for a little while, and then I love that. Thank you.
I thought maybe you drew the short straw for tonight.
Mr. Winkler?
Just want to quickly say thank you to county management. Since the last time we met, I believe, if my dates aren't off and things kind of run together sometimes, we had Silver in the City here in York, and y'all worked with the organizers of that to try to make sure that if they needed space, they had space on the county parking lot here for overflow. I know that was something that, turned out that I think they had a few less than they were thinking, and we didn't need as much space as we thought, but thank y'all for working with them, and overall, it was a real good event. If you didn't come out for it, sorry you missed it, and thank you to the CVB for helping market that.
Thank you. My teeth are chattering. I'm frozen, so that's my comment. Do we have any citizen concerns? Do we have a motion for executive session?
Move we go into executive session for the receipt of legal advice regarding a EEOC charge mediation, receipt of legal advice regarding stormwater litigation, receipt of legal advice regarding the consideration of a mediated settle agreement relating to the new Heritage Phase 2 sewer project, Track 6, as well as the receipt of legal advice regarding the Nation Ford Land Trust MOU.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We will go into executive session. Out of executive session, no action was taken. Do we have any motions?
Regarding the EEOC charge, I move that we authorize settlement as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
Also, I move that we approve the Nation Ford MOU.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
I move that we approve the mediated settlement agreement regarding the New Heritage Phase 2 Sewer Project, Track 6.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none.
And one final motion to,
Sorry, that was a delay.
we good? Also, I move that we authorize the county stormwater enforcement and the civil penalty collection action regarding tax parcels 662-00, -00-036, 037, 038, and 039.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second. Motion and a second. Does anybody want to discuss this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.